Hello and welcome. Today, we got a very fun best of three series between Maximillionaire, Vampire Counts main, and Flower, Dark Elf main, Conquest Enjoyer, and Land Battle Specialist. This should be a good one. Because what do we have going on here? It's going to be Dark Elves with their usual kite army, but the Vampire Counts, they've done something a little weird. Look at this. It's a mass ghost build. Karen Wraith, another one over here, another one over here. And not only that, it's also going to be double Banshee in the distance. Yes, a mass ghost build from the Vampire Counts against a faction with a lot of magic damage. For those of you that don't know, magic damage entirely cleaves through the resistances, the physical resist of these Karen Wraiths, which means they're taking over double damage compared to what they usually would. You'd think that it would be a simple counter, but surprisingly enough, this is actually a new meta build from Maximillionaire. Essentially, yes, while the Karen Wraiths are a little bit susceptible to the magic damage, they do counter this kite playstyle that the Dark Elves are going for. Because you're gonna need to hold these, or at least Maximillionaire is gonna need to hold these points for a good few minutes to win on victory tickets. And if the Dark Elves are able to guide him, well, he's just gonna lose his army, they'll triple cap him, and then the game will be over. But with a unit fast and furious like these Karen Wraiths, and also with the slowing effect, this should actually be pretty advantaged. Especially with a little bit of a misplay here. Medusa gets another shot on the Karen Wraiths, but she does get charged by the Von Karstein Lord. Gonna be a little painful here. This Medusa really needs to run. There we go. Gets bit in the back though, while trying to disengage. And while the value trading is okay, it's not too great. In general, I would say this is actually pretty disadvantaged for the Dark Elves, and that's a little bit surprising because of how the pick and ban system actually works. So real quick, the way the pick and ban system works for this tournament, you can sign up as a mono faction. That means you don't have to change the faction you're playing every game, but it does mean you're going to be getting counterpicked. But instead of going for a counter pick, Flowers actually just decided to play their own main faction, and that's going to be the Dark Elves. Feeling confident that they can beat a shenanigans build like this, they've brought Flaming Sword, which imbues units with magic attacks, but Maximillionaire is better than that. He actually just straight up runs away from the Witch Elves, all the way until they leave the aura of the spell. And now they lose that wonderful magic damage killing power against the Karen Wraiths. Turns out buff spells do have a pretty easy counter, and that is simply walking away. Pretty brutal for these elves who are now getting a little bit out of position. And right now the situation looks bad for the Dark Elves. Yes, they may have a value lead. Yes, they even technically have a ticket lead. But where is this value going right now? It's mostly on this Lord, and until he dies, they don't really reap the rewards of this value. In the meantime, it looks like there's a bit of a snipe on this assassin squad over here, a little ironic. And there's going to be a zombie summon to bog down the range units so that this execution can happen. The Banshee's even distracting the Medusa so she can't shoot at the Lord. And the assassin takes a pretty nasty hit. These Dragon Lords are kind of insane. They do crazy amounts of damage. See that HP? Yep. And his very high melee attack, oh my goodness. Landing hit after hit against that K-Knight Assassin. He routes off. And a very successful sniping attempt from the Vampire Counts is completed. The Witch Elves overextended, get charged by some Vargheists. And unlike a usual slow Vampire Counts build with just a bunch of zombies and Crypt Horrors, this one's actually managed to catch the Dark Elves in melee, which is a very bad situation for their little kite build here. Second assassin starting to get worked on by that Banshee, and we're noticing that, yeah, even though this Dark Elf build does have magic damage, it's kind of not enough because the composition is just better for the Vampire Counts. It doesn't matter if they do extra damage to the Karen Wraiths. You're still catching a kite build in melee, and that's pretty rough. Another flaming sword drops. Let's take a look at this Khorne rate HP. Not even dipping. Did he pull them out of combat? They weren't even in combat. This one's being buffered by the crypt ghouls. Pretty sick play. Now they're taking a bit more damage though. And there we go. That's gonna be pretty painful. Counterflock of Doom to hit this blob though. Both sides doing a lot of damage, but that is definitely in the advantage of the vampire counts. And now you'll notice Maximilianeer is already at 500 tickets. If they get to 1,500, the game is just won for them. And the Dark Elves need to basically army wipe them and take everything out in the next like 5 minutes. But here's the problem. Even though their passive has triggered, which gives them a very nice combat boost, yeah, it's not really gonna help very much. Because the vampire counts already have a very good value lead. Their army on the battlefield is much larger. And even though the strategy was sound for the Dark Elves, there were just a few too many counterplays. None of the magic attacks are really able to land. And oh my goodness, look at these hex rates. I guess, like, you know, the Medusa attacks are pretty nice, but the deeps aren't fast enough. And yeah, I believe this is gonna be... I believe this is pretty donezo. Although, maybe not. Okay, a little bit of a misplay from Maximilianeer. Gets countercharged by the Doomfire Warlocks. Gets hit by a pretty vicious spell too. This is good. And maybe if the vampire counts have a few more misplays, like losing their lord, Dark Elves will come back. But honestly, I'm not entirely too impressed. Wait, yo, Jesus, hex rates. Hex rates just countercharges with zero melee attack, and they actually got a lot of work done purely off of their charge bonus. They get countercharged by Cold One Knights, but honestly, the value was not too bad. Well, I guess 400's a little bad. Here's the thing, though. Can the Dark Elves actually re-secure these points? Let's see. They pulled back to a more defensive position, trying to get into a spot where they can start pulling that value lead again. If you're triple capped and losing in value, that's a pretty bad sign. Flaming Sword is going to help them crumble away a Banshee, which is nice. And there is a little bit of a push through the center, but here's the problem. Vampire counts still have a pretty mobile build. They still have Vargeists. It's not too hard for them to just move in and clean this up. And over here, yeah, it doesn't look like the Dark Elves have enough to actually clean up the mobility. You can see there's actually 3 Vargeists on the battlefield, and usually in these late game positions, it is more advantageous to be the more mobile army, because you're kind of getting to the point where people are racing for capture points. And when you're splitting up like that and you have a bunch of slow infantry, if you stay in a group, you can only secure 1 point at a time, in which case vampire counts would win. If you split up, then the Vargeist can hit 1 group at a time and then win. And if you play defensive and try to get value, you'll just run out of time. Though Dark Elves are still trying to make a play. They park some infantry in the middle. They got some knights here, some Cold One Knights on point number 1, but they disengage because they know they'll just die to the Vargeist if they stick around. And of course, a dead unit is not going to capture a point. Medusa is still alive, but this is looking pretty bad. Zombie Summon 2 to body block the infantry from getting on the point. Good Dragon Lord control, by the way, keeping them alive. And yeah, it turns out bad matchup is bad. Even if both players are, very, very dedicated faction mains. Though not a terribly one-sided match, I must say. Like, even though obviously this looks very bad for the Dark Elves, you know, they're so behind on tickets, it actually would only take a little bit of effort for them to have won this game, because there's not that much vampire counts left on the battlefield. You know, if they were able to actually catch a few Khorne wraiths with their flaming swords, it could have totally gone much better for the Dark Elves if they had a slightly better sniping attempt on this Von Karstein Lord and got him killed. That could have shifted things. We're really only talking just a handful of plays before vampire counts get army wiped, and then they triple cap. And then at that point, it's just a victory. Like, what's even left? One Dire Pact, one Crypt Ghoul, and a couple of Argeists? Pretty fun. Though, I think a Banshee actually got resummoned. That's going to be very annoying. Ethereal units for the vampire counts, they have Frostbite, which just slows units that they hit, making it harder for the Dark Elves to transition. And you can see Maximilianer here is playing very cagey. They're not overly committing their forces because they know as long as they can stall for time, they win. Given infinite amount of time, Dark Elves probably clean up. All these Vargeists are not the craziest in a prolonged fight, but Maximilian knows he can chill, only taking engagements that are advantageous, bringing in the Crypt Ghouls to secure the capture weight. A couple Dark Riders are brought in to try and steal point 3, but that's not going to be enough time because we got a random zombie just chilling here, holding down the fort, slowing them down just enough for the tickets to tip over for Maximilianer. And that's going to be a victory for them. This is just a last Hail Mary for the Dark Elves, trying to rush in to get the point and losing basically all their units trying to do so. So very cool. A counter build to the counter build. This is usually taken against kind of the main tide zombie spam vampire counts. It tends to be pretty good against them because your units have a very easy time running away from zombies. Just too slow. But this mobile Khorne raid style, we've been seeing it a lot more recently, and it seems to work well, even when the other faction is trying to counterplay it with their magic. It's still not good enough just because of the quantity of ethereals and the fact that they're so fast. They just ignore their counters. It's like the Mountain and the Viper, right? If you can just play keep away, it doesn't matter if you're going to get absolutely wrecked in a prolonged fight, because you just avoid it. But game number two is where things get interesting. So Maximilianer signing up as a mono faction, because man, are they the vampire count specialist. They're going to be bringing in another Dragon Lord. This time, though, it is a Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. A much more fighty Lord against the much more fighty faction of Khorne. And Khorne is a natural counter to the vampire counts. Flower has tried their main faction. Now they're counterpicking. And I'm going to show off exactly why this is so bad for the vampire counts usually. Because they don't have range, right? The whole faction is about melee. And most factions deal with that by kiting. But Khorne is a completely different beast. They are the penultimate fighty faction in this game. And instead of going wide, they've gone ultra elite, bringing in Wrathmongers. Look at that. Absurd stats these guys have. They got chosen dual weapons of Khorne. They got exalted bloodletters. So not only do they have the best infantry here, ready to grind up against literal zombies, they also have Skarbrand and Karnak, which make for an amazing single entity sniping squad. Karnak netting down the Lord. He's also rampaged by Skarbrand. And oh my goodness. Goodbye HP on that Lord. Is he going to be saved by the Crypt Horrors though? It looks like he does get saved. The Banshees here are helping out too. But that was an insane trade. Here's the thing though. Skarbrand does not heal. He actually has no ways to regain HP. Same with Karnak. Same with basically all Khorne units. But the Vampire Lord does. So what the win condition is here is probably going to be whether or not the Lord can eventually kill Skarbrand, or if Skarbrand eventually kills Dragon Lord. Obviously, in a prolonged fight, Skarbrand's going to be much better. But in a short fight, or in a prolonged fight, the Vampire Lord does better. In a short fight, Scarbrand does better. He also dumpsters the Banshees with his melee attacks. And you might think this is a terrible position for the Vampire counts, and it is. This is why the matchup is usually quite bad. But they do have some tools to potentially bring it back. For one, they can try to win the infantry fight. Now, under normal circumstances, these guys will win. Obviously, these are the most elite melee fighters in the game. But with a bit of cycle charging from the Blood Dragon Lord, he can tip the tide of power. He can also use breath attacks to support, and that's generally how it goes here. Vampire counts are using their single entities and their spells. Oh my goodness, another rampage. But yeah, they're using their single entities and their spells to try and turn the fight, which is why this guy is so important to keep alive. Gets smacked by Scarbrand multiple times. Rampage does wear off. Oh my goodness, another hit. Scarbrand, is he using his abilities? He has Slaughter and Carnage built up. That's 13% more damage. Vampire Count's Lord does escape again. But yeah, like I was saying, Vampire Counts, they're trying to use their extra tools here to win the fight, while Khorne is using their single entities to prevent those tools from getting work. So, for example, killing off this Dragon Lord prevents breath attacks. However, his disengage does let him get this one off. Gets about the third HP off of that Chosen. Pretty impressive. And a Gaze of Nagash. Ooh, okay, there we go. On the Bloodweight Berserkers. It's a pretty good counter to them just because they have high HP per entity. So it doesn't overkill them. It just about kills them, which is exactly what you want. Especially with such an elite unit, that's definitely going to get a lot of value. That almost 1,300 with barely any kills. And this is nice, but still not a win condition. Maximilianer knows he's going to need more oomph here, and he summons in the Mortis engine. But Scarbrand's getting a lot of work done too, cycle charging through the Graveguard, but mostly playing defensive. Because this game is not just about YOLOing in your units. It is also about maneuvering and shutting down the win conditions of your opponent. And that means stopping this guy from charging in. If Scarbrand was stuck in combat over here, this Dragon Lord would be free to cycle charge as much as he wants. Another Gaze of Nagash, very nice. He'd be free to cycle charge. But with Scarbrand ready to counter any charges, it's a little risky. Oh my goodness, another Rampage. Although this one's a little jankier. This time Black Knights with Barding were over here. They move on in to body block Scarbrand. And the Dragon Charge is still pretty devastating too. Scarbrand was not able to drag him into the Khorne formation, and that actually leads to a pretty bad trade for Scarbrand. Very sketchy position. And in fact, if this Dragon Lord does continue the fight, if he does stick around and get a ton of healing off, he probably kills Scarbrand now. The thing is though, one bad fight in Scarbrand can definitely kill him. As we saw earlier, he can easily take a third of his HP off. So we definitely still have a fight. These are Brutes of the Hound, unbreakable Marauder Berserkers coming in to help out the fight. But this is not a great position. Oh my gosh, another beautiful breath attack on the Chosen. This is not a great position for Khorne, actually. A lot of their infantry has been getting worn down, and with the help of the Mortis engine, things are pretty rough. You might think the Mortis engine has an AoE heal. Ooh, okay, Sword of Khorne just lands. But that actually might shift things. But yeah, you might think the Mortis engine, you know, it has a heal that's mitigated by the fire attacks of Khorne. It has a Mortis engine effect that's mitigated by the spell resist of Khorne. But at the end of the day, the Mortis engine is just so good in blob fights, it's still going to be good. Kind of like, you know, the Ethereal situation earlier. It's soft countered, not hard countered in this case. Something that does hard counter it, though, is Scarbrand chucking an axe at it. Getting some pretty big damage. Flower needs to kill off the Mortis engine and the Dragon Lord to stop the value trading going the way of the Vampire counts. As soon as those big single entities are dead, then it's way easier for the Khorne infantry to just win in a normal fight. But Scarbrand's a little too low. That one bad fight for Scarbrand is kind of putting him in an awkward position where he can't punish these tools as much as he wants. He's actually playing a lot more defensively. Some Blood Knights too in the backfield, bullying Khorne. This is actually pretty cool because Khorne would otherwise be netting this Dragon Lord. And a back point has been secured by Maximilianer. Königstein Stalkers chilling on the point. This is looking a little sketchy. The thing is though, the battle's not over until one of these guys dies. And it seems like Maximilianer is going for the kill now. Gets the Dragon Lord, charges Scarbrand, only hits him once though. And Scarbrand looping around. Is he gonna go for the fight? Looks like he's stomping away. Scarbrand trying to disengage. He's exhausted though, he's wounded, so he's actually slowed down a lot. Dragon Lord, much healthier, is gonna be on the chase. And Maximilianer wants to go for the kill. Dragon Lord takes up into the skies. Will Scarbrand get murdered? He needs a support of something to peel this dragon off. Opting for a Marauder Horseman summon to try and shift the tide of battle. But Scarbrand's already at 1300 HP, and if he dies here, it's over. If he dies, this Dragon Lord has free reign over the situation, and the Khorne infantry can't do anything. In fact, even without Scarbrand right now, the Mortis Engine's just cooking this infantry fight. But it looks like he will live. Khorne uses the net to pin down the Dragon Lord and hopefully buy some time for these throwing axes to get some damage. But this is looking pretty bad for the Vampire accounts. Previously, Maximilianer had the advantage matchup. Now they're disadvantaged, but it seems like after a few good engagements, they're still in a pretty good position. You have to be careful though. Another rampage on the Dragon Lord. He's surrounded by axe throwers. And Scarbrand gets a massive rear charge on the Dragon Lord. He's facing the wrong direction. He was facing Khorne, but he turns around because of the rampage to attack Scarbrand. He's at 400, he's at 500 HP. Brings Scarbrand down to 500 and he goes down. Scarbrand disengages, but he's at -4 leadership. If he crumbles, oh my goodness, he takes so much damage per second. 400 HP left. 390. 200. I think the Horseman just friendly fired Scarbrand. What are you doing? Trying to shoot at the zombies. Oh my gosh, line of sight is usually so hard to acquire, but the Horsemen don't care. They get a massive chunk on Scarbrand and he dies to his own men. The backstabbery, I can't believe it. Khorne starts crumbling too because of it. He was fighting 2 Banshees, already not a very good fight. But that is pretty disastrous for both sides. Vampire accounts no longer have a Dragon Lord. During the madness, the Mortis Engine actually ends up dying, charging into Wrathmongers and exploding. And that means that this could just become a normal melee for Khorne. And as far as Khorne is concerned, normal melees are amazing. They love normal melees, except, you know, maybe not this one. Dire Pact actually get a charge on the Horsemen. A little bit of a misplay from Flower. Yeah, those Horsemen are the only unit that are kind of glass cannons that do not want to be charged by anti-large dogs. But regardless, we still have Forsaken, we still have Minotaur great weapons. They're anti-large specialists. They bully cavalry like no one's business. And Vampire counts as stuck summoning infantry. If Khorne can just get enough melee units out, Vampire counts can't do anything about it. They'll just slowly die to the value trading of all these guys. Exalted Bloodletters are clearing out point number 2 also. But I'm a little worried because there's not that much infantry. There's one Exalted Bloodletter over here. Vampire counts are rapidly losing their cavalry. But they do have a triple cap. Time is of the essence for the forces of Khorne. Interesting that he pulls away here. I feel like these guys can just countercharge with how low the dogs are. But it's not too bad cutting away and just avoiding damage. Pulling into the infantry. Very common escape tactic. And whoa, the dogs, they phased through. Going right through the Exalted Bloodletters. They're actually going to rout off the Horsemen. I think they will. Look at that. 2 HP dogs routing off the Horsemen. Disastrous situation. This is because Khorne suffers a lot more from the Lord being dead, because they have leadership penalties, as opposed to the vampire counts, who just suffer a little bit of crumbling damage. Crumbling is nothing compared to demonic crumbling. And the middle point... For the middle point, the zombies have arrived. Dogs are actually chasing off these horsemen. I can't believe it. They do chase off the horsemen. Look at that. Dogs with 13 HP left. Oh, and they're gone. Actually, kind of a crazy play, too. Those horsemen could have been really useful for securing these points. I think it might have been a little bit of a misplay trying to run away. Those horsemen probably could have just countercharged the dogs to get them killed. But it's hard to make these decisions in the heat of battle. Second Sword of Khorne, by the way, coming down. I'm going to be landing right on top of these zombies. Will it get them to crumbling, though? Surprisingly enough, not. The Banshees providing their leadership effect with their encourage will be keeping these zombies in the fight. One of them slow crumbling, but not fast crumbling. But that's not going to matter too much because Khorne's infantry have arrived. Their goal, clear all of this off the point and secure this in time so that Khorne wins on 2 capture points. If the vampire counts get too high on tickets, well... Khorne's gonna need to go over here, and that extra time is just gonna put them behind. You can't afford to let that happen. Maximilianer knows this, so they're parking the units on the point, and they're not even fighting. They're just parking the high capture weight crypt ghouls in the back, while using the low capture weight zombies to buffer against Khorne's forces. Never have we ever seen a more vampire count strategy. With the tide of super mega amazing chaff getting in the work. These zombies actually rally charging in too. Some cavalry cycle charging. We have a crypt ghoul over here distracting a Khorne gore so that they can't be participating in this fight. And I think the vampire counts are gonna do it. They only need 200 more tickets to win. Khorne needs 300. So technically, if Khorne captures this point right now, they'll be able to win on the 2 cap. But it's a slow capture. And a unit of Dire Pact has been resummoned, parked onto the point to get the capture weight up. And is looking pretty sus. I would say this is another misplay too. Horsemen getting sent to kill the crypt ghouls, but they weren't going to capture this point anyways. Maybe he thought there was another crypt ghoul incoming. Maybe Flower just wants to go for the value trade, but the opportunity is closing. The window is closing where they need to triple cap to win the game. In fact, I think it's already closed. Khorne needs triple cap, and they just barely don't have the capture weight here. Another dog versus horseman. Fight has begun. Counter charge is in, and you can see the dogs do take a lot of damage from the horsemen on the charge, but the horsemen are taking quite a bit of deeps too. Let's take a look. Oh my goodness, their leadership is absolutely atrocious without Scarbrand. Oh, they do get Relentless Rage though, becoming unbreakable and unkillable. But if they can't clear the dogs, it's pretty bad for them. Even though this point is getting captured, you can see 1,500 tickets is coming. There's only 30 seconds left. And this cavalry is going to take a lot longer than 30 seconds to capture point number 3. Many undead units are crumbling here, but they surprisingly enough still have capture weight because of the double banshees. And that's going to be it. Maximilianer, the vampire counts main, defeating Flower 2-0 for this first match in the grand finals. Very impressive. They beat Flower at their main faction, the Dark Elves, and they beat Flower when they were trying to counterpick. I think in general, Maximilianer played a little bit more clean, I will say. Getting their Lord Rampage was very scary. There were a few opportunities where they might have died, but Flower just barely wasn't able to pull it through. Some really nice breath attacks on those Chosen too. Absolutely magnificent, shutting them down because otherwise they would just farm value like no one's business, kind of like these Wrathmongers. And using tools like the Mortis engine to pull back crazy value. You can see, even with the spell resist. It still gets 2,300 plus it's healing. Absolutely ludicrous. Love to see that we're actually fielding Blood Knights too. Even though they didn't do amazing, the cavalry did help push back Scarbrand to keep this guy alive just long enough to trade. And that's gonna be it. Very fun matches, but you know, as much as these are high-level players, if you are interested in playing tournaments yourself, you can head over to my Discord, where they are open to new players. So keep an eye out for that. We have raffles for DLCs and such, if that interests you. But if you also just enjoy watching, that works for me too. Fun matches. I'm excited to see how the other ones play out. We're still quite a ways from the finals, but the games are already quite magnificent. And I really do wonder if Maximillionaire is going to be able to continue winning despite getting counterpicked. Because this game could have gone either way for sure.